You guys know the feeling that every additional week, the players you drafted get less and less valuable. There's no worse feeling. It absolutely sucks. We have another week of data now to look at some of these players to either remind us that we're great at drafting or that we're just bad. And in this video, I want to talk about some panic players, right? So there are a couple of new names to this list of players that I'm panicked about following week 3. There's a couple of mainstays, dudes that are on this list pretty much every week. And if a dude is a mainstay on this list, that should mean his value is pretty much zero, in my opinion. Without wasting any more of your time, guys, let's hop into the list of players. And the first two names are dudes that have been on this list already, and it's essentially red alert time. Javonte Williams, I'm not going to talk too much about them. He looks slow. He's trapped in a 3-man rotation. The Broncos are a pretty brutal offense. Like, there's not a lot of like relevant fantasy production for anyone on the Broncos. So Javonte Williams, in my opinion, is like, you can't sell him. Nobody's going to give you anything for him, right? There might be someone that's willing to trade you like, a bench running back for him off the potential that maybe the Broncos pick it up, but for the most part, there's nothing much you could do with him. You have to just sit on him. Zamir White's the second guy. I made a video last week. You guys should head over. I basically said, it was on Friday night, I said to pick up Alexander Mattison because if Zamir White doesn't produce against the 32nd ranked run defense, which is the Panthers, he's done. That's it. It's fucking finito. Ciao Bello. We're done with Zamir White, man. He is just inefficient. He's not a good runner. He looks slow. He's just a guy. I know the Raiders, and before this week, Antonio Pierce said, he's our guy. He's our 3-down back. We want to get him 20 touches. But after this loss to Carolina, bro, they're going to have to make some changes. And Alexander Mattison got another goal line touch and a touchdown this week. Mattison very quietly has 3 touchdowns on the season. So, I think they just end up shifting to him eventually. But the first official dude on this list, a new dude on this list, I was already kind of panicked about him last week, is DeAndre Swift. So this is Swift's second time appearing on the panic list. Let's look at his stats, man. So he goes 10 for 30 in week 1, 5 fantasy points, gets no receptions, so that's a little bit concerning. Week 2, 14 for 18. He says, yo, you guys thought I was bad from a yards per carry point of view? Hold my beer, dude. But this time actually gets 5 targets, 4 receptions for 24 in week 2. And then this week in week 3, just absolutely horrific. It's not DeAndre Swift, man. I'm going to say that to start off. It's not DeAndre Swift. It is the O-line. DeAndre Swift, don't get me wrong, he's not the best running back, but 13 for 20 on the ground and, 2 receptions for 22. Now, the thing that's concerning is that he's got 1.8 yards per carry on 37 carries this season. So he's getting decent volume, and his yards per carry is not getting any better. It looks like, at least in week 1, 3 yards per carry, we were roasting him. I mean, what are we doing now? I want to show you guys this video of DeAndre Swift. It was basically that 4th and goal play. I don't know if you guys remember it. So check out the O-line. Dog, what is he supposed to do with that? It was like a 17-yard loss on the goal line. I want you guys to keep a close look to how many Bears offensive linemen are laying down on the floor, bro. It's like they're playing Twister. Off on the hike, Twister, 3, dude. 4 offensive linemen for the Bears. There's 6 Colts defenders around him. Look at this. They're playing Twister, bro. How did that dude fall at the end? How did number 70 fall? Watch number 70. Anyway, we're down bad, dude. Roschon Johnson outplayed him. Had more yards per carry. Got targets, dude. Roschon Johnson went 4 for 32 in the air. If Roschon Johnson's going to bleed into his carries and to his targets and receptions, we are down bad. A lot of people thought it was going to be Khalil Herbert. It's Roschon Johnson that they're going to give the biggest chance to. He's just better as a receiving back, and it seems like the O-line can't really do much, and Roschon Johnson's the only one that can do anything with this offensive line. So, yeah, man. Swift has bad vision, dude. He's a bad vision running back. He's not the type of dude who can carry an offensive line and make an offensive line look better. He just doesn't hit the right holes very often. He's more of an edge runner, right? Pitch plays to the outside, and that's not working because the O-line are obviously playing Twister and they're laying down every play. So DeAndre Swift, panic mode. I don't think you can sell him for anything. If I tried to trade DeAndre Swift today for Jaylen Warren, I'm pretty sure it would get denied. And Jaylen Warren is the panic meter on Jaylen Warren is also high because they benched him because they said he didn't look right. Maybe he's still dealing with an injury, but I don't know what you could do with Swift. Moving on now, Rachaad White. Now, I am firmly in the Rachaad White hate club, so I love having Rachaad White on this list. It's now 3 weeks in a row that I've had Rachaad White, and it's gotten worse for him. I know he did a little better than last week, but off of volume, dude, yet again. So Rachaad White, week 1, 15 for 31, bleh, yards per carry, horrible. But he salvaged it with 6 for 75. And, Rachaad White truthers were kind of victory lapping, saying, see, he's going to get the receptions. Now, in week 2, shows us that he's like, 2.7 yards per carry. Hold my beer, dude. And he goes 1.8. Last week, not much better, 6 for 17. But he salvages again, gets 6 fantasy points off of 5 receptions for 18 yards. So even in the one thing he's good at, it just wasn't working because the other team just knows what's happening. It's just brutal, man. He has a diminishing ground involvement. So 15 attempts in week 1, that followed by 10, followed by 6 in week 3. So Bucky Irving has really emerged. He's got 6.16 yards per carry on the season on 25 attempts, and he went 9 for 70 on Sunday. So Bucky Irving just looks like he shot out of a cannon. He hits the holes harder. He's a better pure runner. Essentially, Rachaad White's going to be unplayable in the next 4 weeks. I don't know exactly when the takeover happens, but it's going to be the Bucky Irving show. Listen, if you're a Rachaad White owner, just be honest with yourself, dude. Are you watching the games or are you looking at the box scores? Be brutally honest with yourself. Does he look like a good running back? Anyway, Rachaad White is the next guy I'm panicked about. Next dude is Jaylen Waddle. One of my guys this season. Just an absolutely brutal beat for Jaylen Waddle. Week 1 does okay, but off of low volume, 5 for 109. Week 2, Tua gets the injury, but even before the Tua injury, Waddle was really kind of a no-show. They were just the way the Bills were defending the Dolphins. They were just all over them from the jump. Tua barely had any time to throw or for plays to develop. It was brutal. And then this week, we get the Skylar Thompson experience. I said in one of my previous videos, I know I'm going to hate him. I'm going to think he's like Skylar White from Breaking Bad. And I hated him, dude. From the very beginning, I hated Skylar Thompson. The dude doesn't look further than 10 yards down the field. They got Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, but they're passing the ball to like just white dudes named like Ingold, Connor, Braxton Berrios, white dude, but Hispanic name. So that I'm okay with. We're down bad, dude. Like the entire offense looked horrific. The Seattle Seahawks defense is actually very legit. They're the number 1 secondary by a country mile. They have 2 standout cornerbacks. They have a solid front 7. They're just one of the better defenses this season. And they're also one of the better offenses, which is kind of insane, right? Like, I do think better days are ahead for Waddle. But, like, wide receiver 35 rankings until Tua comes back, like, maybe in the 30s, maybe in the 40s. Like, I don't know if you could start Waddle. Like, I think I'd start Darnell Mooney over Waddle every week for the next foreseeable future until Tua's back. So Tim Boyle and Thompson, they're both not NFL caliber quarterbacks. In week 8 is when we potentially expect Tua to come back because keep in mind, Tua missed week 3. He's going to miss week 4 and 5. So that's 3 weeks on IR. Week 6 does not count for IR, so he's going to have to miss week 7 against Indy. So he's going to come back week 8 at the earliest, right? Like, I think it's kind of like a public relations scam that they're running right now where, like, supposedly Tua was at Disneyland the day after his concussion. And, I mean, maybe that explains why he was at Disneyland. Maybe because he was concussed, he went to Disneyland. I think the only people that go to Disneyland are people with, like, brutal concussions and are trapped in like a kid-like state, you know? But yeah, anyway, week 8, even when Tua's back, I'm kind of worried. Like 5 for 109 in week 1 with Tua and fully healthy and against the decrepit Jacksonville Jaguars. Not great, Bob. 5 for 109 is just like, it's not the volume that we would have loved, right? Like I would have loved if the Dolphins were like a complete 3-man funnel between Achane, Waddle, and Tyreek. And it is, but just on shit volume, on bad volume. So, like, I wish the pass game, it would be more of a pass-first team. They seem to be trying to become like the 49ers. It's just like the Shanahan tree, right? Like, Mike McDaniel also comes from that 49ers background. But, it just sucks, man. It's an offense that a lot of people were targeting in drafts, thinking we're going to have this high-flying, high-powered offense, and it's just not that. So, next dude on the list is Michael Pittman. I love Michael Pittman. I'm a USC fan, but I hate Michael Pittman as a fantasy asset. I don't need to really explain much, dude. 8 targets in week 1, 4 for 31. 7 targets in week 2, 3 for 21. 5 targets in week 3, 4 for 36. He has low average depth of target, a decent target share, but low value targets. He's not getting the volume, and he's like a volume merchant, right? Like that's where he really made most of his cheddar is on volume. So he's currently not getting the volume, and the volume he is getting is coming from Anthony Richardson, who's probably one of the worst quarterbacks we have in the NFL at the moment. As far as quarterbacking goes, like just strictly throwing the ball. I know as a fantasy asset, he's got, rushing upside, but he just looks absolutely horrendous as a quarterback. And Michael Pittman is currently pacing for 62 receptions for 498 yards, 0 touchdowns on 113 targets. So, yeah, 31% first read rate, dude. This is only weeks 1 and 2, so this doesn't account for week 3, but I imagine it's probably going to be something similar. He is a first read option for the Colts. They are looking his way most of the time, but the issue is that he has really poor separation. So he's 8th lowest among all wide receivers in separation score. And he's the worst on his own team. So out of all the wide receivers on his team, including most of the NFL, he just does not separate. He doesn't get open on his routes, right? And having a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's not like a dart thrower, he's not like a Matthew Stafford, he's not like an Aaron Rodgers who can fit things into tight windows. He is definitely like cannon arm. That's why I've been saying for the past 3 weeks, like Anthony Richardson has two passes in his repertoire. Like the nicest pass I've ever seen, and it has to be like 60 yards down the field. And that one barely works, right? That one has like a 5% hit rate where it bugs out. And then he has just absolute horrible, like duck, bad, doesn't fit it into good windows. It hits the ground, like it's off target. It's not like to the right shoulder where the defender's not at. I don't know. Anyway, Michael Pittman, I am very worried about. Sam Laporta is the next one. Now, keep in mind, dude, caveat for both of these tight ends I'm about to name. Tight end we're down bad at tight end in general, so you're not going to be like benching these guys. You're not going to really do anything with these guys. It's just slight panic based on where we drafted them. Sam Laporta, so 4 for 45 in week 1. We're like, okay, 6 points, we'll take it. And then brutal 2 for 13 in week 2 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where, to be honest, Tampa Bay Buccaneers always have like a strong run D with Vita Vea and them boys up front. So you'd expect a guy like Sam Laporta to be pretty effective on like the short yardage stuff, but it turned into an Amon-Ra St. Brown game. He had like 17 targets. And then week 2, 2 for 36, gets the sprained ankle at the end. So yeah, we don't know what it's going to look like. And we were expecting this game to be a shootout between Arizona and Detroit. Detroit's kind of leading most of the game, so they're really like pounding the ball with David Montgomery, so that could explain why the lack of usage. But it's just generally kind of concerning. Like, I'm just against tight ends in general, especially when you draft them high, dude. Like Laporta was the tight end 1 in fantasy last season. Tight end 1 in fantasy last season, but the amount of points he scored would have put him at about wide receiver 18ish. So there were 17 better wide receivers than him, even though he finished tight end 1. And I know that was kind of an outlier year for tight ends. Like the year prior to that, Travis Kelce would have been like the wide receiver 4 or something like that. But it just shows you that tight ends are very fluky, right? Like even when you have the best one, it's still not like the best. You're still giving up a lot of the opportunity cost is high, where you could have got, dude, imagine if instead of Sam Laporta you drafted like a Chris Godwin, and Chris Godwin was going 3 rounds later. Like you'd be feeling real pretty right now. And then you punted tight end and you took like a Ferguson later on, right? Like I wish I had Ferguson right now. I had Dallas Goedert and then dropped him in after week 2 for fucking Hunter Henry. So imagine how I feel. Woo-saw, man. Woo-saw, dude. Watching Dallas Goedert go for a commanding career high. I'm not talking about like, just like, the best day he's had this year, last year. I'm talking Dallas Goedert went like 170 total yards, 10 receptions, and I dropped him right before week 3 for Hunter Henry, who had 1 point. Like, oh man, I'm probably going to cut this out, but oh my goodness. So yeah, Sam Laporta's not getting the volume. He's not getting the touchdowns. Those were the things that made him good last season, obviously. And you can't really sell him because his value's in the toilet. So I don't know really what to do. You're just going to sit on these guys. Travis Kelce's number 2, dude. I don't need to talk much about Travis Kelce. He's kind of been a mainstay on this list as well. 3 for 34 in week 1. Doesn't look like he's really cemented in the offense or a focal point. And then, 1 for 5 in week 2, brutal. And that's against Cincinnati, which is like a huge game. He gets like a big 50-yard pass called back off a penalty. So that could have been a little better of a day. And then this week, 4 for 30, man. He's just really not involved. Halftime only had like one catch. He's just like his role that he had in past seasons has been taken over by Rashee Rice, who's really like the intermediate crosser, which is like such a valuable role to have in fantasy football in general. Like it's Travis Kelce's really just a short yardage guy. He's just like a safety valve. They just kind of like run him on, like he's running a decent amount of routes, but it's really just like somebody that they look at on third down. So yeah, I just don't know what else you do. Like, do you sell him? Probably not. Nobody really wants Travis Kelce. Maybe somebody who's really tight end needy, like someone like me, might be down to like get a Kelce, but he'd have to be included in like a package. I'd have to be like, tearing up somewhere else. I don't know. Brutal beat, panic mode for all these guys. Tank Dell's the next one. So Tank Dell's somebody that I had on my sell high list last week. So go check that video if you guys want. Where I basically said like, dude, I know a lot of people are saying that he's a buy low, but he's actually like a sell high because people still think his name has value, right? Like everybody thinks they're buying low on him, but they're still giving up a lot. And he's the clear third option. Like there's no more. We have now 3 weeks of data. Nico Collins is a bona fide alpha wide receiver, probably a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. He just looks so good. And also Stroud just really isn't looking as good right now. Like as he seems to be having a second year slump, or it might be the schedule. I mean, Chicago and Indy are 2 very good defenses, it seems. They might be like the number 2 and number 3 defense this year, especially the Vikings. So, I don't know. The Texans just, like, the thesis going into the season was, like, they're going to be the number 1 offense. Stroud will be able to support 3 wide receivers. All 3 of them are going to be fine. Tank Dell's going to be the number 2 guy. Stephon Diggs is going to be, like, kind of that possession receiver, like, old wily vet who gets those third down catches. But it's actually the other way around. It's Nico, then it's Stephon, then it's Tank Dell. I don't really know what to do with him. He still has some name value, still being attached to a good offense. You might be able to sell it like, hey, dude, they had a tough schedule with Chicago and Minnesota. Buy him now before he starts popping out, before their schedule opens up. But their schedule doesn't really open up that much, right? Like Jacksonville, Buffalo, New York. And keep in mind what Jacksonville did to Miami. Keep in mind what New England did to the Bengals, how they fucking bracketed Jamar Chase. Like, and then you got, Green Bay doesn't look too bad. They just dominated the Titans. The Jets and the Lions aren't, a slouch. So I don't know, man. It's just we're down bad with Tank Dell. I don't know what to do with him. Mike Evans is the next one on the list. Mike Evans is pretty much why I don't like Mike Evans, where I panic about Mike Evans, is really just because of Godwin and kind of what Mike Evans' role has succumbed to. So 6 for 5 for 61 and 2 touchdowns in week 1. We thought, all right, Mike Evans is going to have another year of being an absolute alpha, red zone monster, touchdown beast. He's good for another 1,000 yards and, 10 touchdowns minimum. In week 2 and 3, we see that kind of change. So only 3 for 42 in week 2, and that's in a solid matchup, you would think, against Detroit. And then in week 3, we had our concerns because we did expect Patrick Surtain to be shadowing him. He only goes 2 for 17. He's lacking the volume that kind of gives him that top 10 upside. And Chris Godwin is playing this Cooper Kupp role. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. But this is Chris Godwin's stats through 3 games. So 21.4 fantasy points per game. That's top 5 wide receiver all over it. 85% of the routes, 31% targets, 37% of the air yards. So Chris Godwin plays a slot. Keep that in mind. 64% of the slot snaps. So that's what I mean when I say he plays mostly in the slot. Utilization score of 8.5. That's based on Fantasy Life's utilization report. It's a really good report that scores kind of how they're being utilized versus like what the quality of the targets, how downfield they are, red zone targets, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, like based on the last 4 years, his comps have averaged 16.7 points per game. That would make him a low-end wide receiver 1 most seasons. So this is a quote from Greg Allman. I don't know who that is, but he's a white old boomer wearing a dress shirt, so it's valid, it's verified. The Bucks have said they'll use Godwin in the slot after shifting him outside last year with an eye on avoided injuries. It's the role Cooper Kupp had with the Rams when Cohen was there, right? So we all expected Cohen to kind of bring this Rams offense to the Bucks. It looks like he has, and it looks like Godwin is playing the Kupp role, which is like high value targets from the slot. Mike Evans is going to be absorbing a lot of double coverage and going to be absorbing that, shadow coverage like we saw with Pat Surtain. And yeah, basically Mike Evans is like, unfortunately, kind of like the the casualty in all this, right? Where he's taking a lot of the double teams and stuff. And he's not really getting the red zone role either, right? One red zone target in 2024, although he did catch a touchdown. That was in week 1. So, yeah, man. That's all for the list, boys. Those are the players I'm panicked about. I think most of these guys, you kind of just have to sit tight with them. You kind of just have to sit tight and like see what happens. Wait till they have a pop week. See if you can maybe include them in package deals, especially the ones that have a lot of name value. There's probably tons of other players we could be very much worried about, but these are the ones that I don't know if it's going to quite turn it around. Like Tank Dell might be one of the few. Obviously, Mike Evans might be the ones where they'll pop up for a game here or there. Like they'll break out. Mike Evans will have better matchups. Tank Dell will be let loose a little bit. They have to get him involved, especially how bad they just looked against the Vikings. So, yeah, man. Hope you guys liked this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I try to keep the cussing to a minimum based on some comments, but I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.